Welcome to Stop Overthinking, the podcast for overthinkers, people pleasers, and perfectionists who want to feel calm and confident enough to handle whatever life sends your way. I'm your host, Kristen Odegaard, a women's life and mindset coach, lifelong educator, and recovering perfectionist. Welcome back to the Stop Overthinking podcast. If you are here in the United States with me, we just came off of Memorial Day weekend, and hopefully you had an opportunity to relax, enjoy time with friends or family, or something that was able to fill you up and refresh you as we are headed into the summer season. I had a pretty low key weekend, and for me, that was just what I needed and able to get outside and finally get some of my flowers planted and my kids got along. So it was nice just to have that extra day. But of course, now coming back into the week, I always feel like I'm playing catch up. I don't know what day it is. I went to a wrong appointment this morning because I was confused about what day it is, and such is life. So, good and bad is what I'm going to talk about today. This whole concept of and. It's a topic, again, that comes up pretty frequently with my clients in the sense that we get this notion of things needing to be one way. And a lot of times it's kind of black and white thinking, like things are good or bad. People are good or bad. We even have certain foods that are good for us and foods that are bad for us, weather that is good, weather that is not so good. And of course, feelings that are good and others that aren't, and even that we'll consider as negative feelings. Today, I'm going to focus on the emotional aspect and invite you to see beyond this good feeling, bad feeling, or good feelings and negative feelings, and even further ask you to consider that you want to feel both good and bad. So, not just that there's good and bad, but also that we want all of them. As humans, we were designed and we're capable of feeling all of these emotions, hundreds and hundreds of different feelings. It's the human experience to have ups and downs and to recognize that others are not always going to act and do the things that we would prefer. And even that our own words and actions may not always give us the exact results that we want either. And that is perfectly okay. Most of us have been taught that we should be happy all the time. Like that is our goal. That's the ultimate experience. And we hear things like, I just want to be happy. I just want my kids to be happy. And even things like good vibes only. And while these sound really nice and appealing and even innocent, it can actually be harmful to have some of these thoughts. And here's why. It's impossible to only have good feelings or good vibes. And it sets up negativity that you're actually trying to avoid by creating this inner tension and turmoil because you can't exist there. And people, when they hear this, they'll be like, well, Kristen, that's not really what I mean. And so I'll ask, well, what do you mean? What does happiness mean? And most of the time, people will hem and haw. They may not know. And they'll say, well, I don't just mean happy. I don't mean just that one feeling. I mean good feelings. And so I'll ask, well, what are those? And the common ones are things like joy, excitement, love, kindness, humor, light, peace. And again, that sounds lovely, but let's be real. How many people do you know that live in those so-called good feelings? People that don't have worry, they don't have fear or stress, or they never feel sad or exasperated or react to other people. They're never dismayed or feel unsupported, and they never grieve. Pretty unlikely. When our social narrative is to only have good feelings, we are unintentionally creating what we're trying to avoid because we are resisting these quote unquote negative emotions. We don't think that we should have them, which leads to inner turmoil, thoughts about what's wrong with us, perhaps shame, fear, hiding, because we're not able to share those pieces of ourselves openly or with other people because they're bad. And for my listeners who are overthinkers, people pleasers, and perfectionists, this can be so incredibly unhelpful. Thinking, I just want to be happy. I should just be happy. I only want to have good feelings. Any thoughts like that hurts you because this is something that no matter what, you can't achieve. No matter how hard you try, no matter how much you think about it, you can't avoid the human experience. By resisting the emotions, by not wanting to feel bad or having these negative thoughts about feeling bad, see right there, you're creating your negative thoughts. You're building your own sense of disappointment, unworthiness, incompetence, inferiority. There might be avoidance, judgment, feeling self conscious, critical. See all the negativity that builds up by trying to resist what's negative. You're creating more negative. The reality is that life is 50-50, 50% good and 50% bad. And you can look at this on a daily, monthly, yearly, seasons of life, or your overall life, however, whatever metric you want to use. But overall, there is balance. And this was really freeing for me. Like there wasn't something wrong with me. And I knew that, like logically, I knew that, but it still was this sense of having to feel positive, only needing to show positive, only being able to show parts of myself to other people. We need this balance. And it has to be there because you need perspective. How do you know what happiness is if you don't have it to gauge against anything else? When someone that you love dies, don't you want to be able to feel sadness and grief and loss? Of course, you can't exist in happiness there. Or you could, but do you really want to? When you lose a job or a big opportunity, it's appropriate to feel crushed or disappointment. And while you're saying, well, yes, of course, that makes sense. If the underlying subconscious thought in your brain is the goal is, I just want to be happy, just to be happy, you're still creating this internal conflict. So you're hearing me, you may logically know this. You have to believe it. You have to believe that it's okay to feel good and bad. So, some ways that you can kind of check this out. If you're not sure where you are or what your beliefs may be, you can just start by noticing things. Like what happens when you feel lonely or stressed or cranky or impatient? Do you let yourself just feel those things? Or do you resist the emotion? Distract yourself. Common distraction techniques are like eating, drinking, scrolling, shopping. Could be just pacing around. Some people clean, others read. So they aren't those aren't bad things to do, the eating, drinking, scrolling, shopping kinds of things. But if you are using them to resist emotion, it's not going to help you in the long run. That's a whole nother podcast about how things can be built up in your body. So just notice when you are feeling these negative sorts of emotions. When I say to just feel them, most people think that that means like to react. So if somebody is feeling angry or irritated, this doesn't mean that you are yelling or necessarily doing anything. That's a reaction. Feeling the emotion is literally just that, like checking in with your body and noticing what's going on. I'll talk a little bit more about how to actually do that in a moment. Another way you can notice just your tolerance of good and bad feelings is when you are with a friend or a partner or another person who's feeling bad or down. Are you able to just listen and allow them to have their feelings? Or do you get uncomfortable and try and soothe them and make them feel better? So, again, there's a balance. There's times that people are going to want this, but is it making you uncomfortable and you're trying to provide it, or are you giving them what they need? So, these thoughts of, I just want to be happy, I only want to feel good, villainizes so much of our daily lives. And society has brought this on. It's so easy to do. We have billion-dollar industries that are designed to make us feel good, that are designed to make us escape reality from, entertainment and, food and all of those things. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with those things. But generally, this whole concept, this whole idea about just feeling happy, about entertaining and not feeling bad, is really pretty new within the last couple of generations. My grandparents that lived through World War II were not talking about just wanting to be happy. Now, again, it doesn't mean you have to live in despair and survival mode, but to find a balance and understand, truly believe in balance for yourself. And I've said before, I'll keep saying it and saying it, what we think, even subconsciously, really matters. Do you believe that all emotions are good? Feeling all the emotions, good and bad, is the goal rather than just feeling positive, just feeling happy. Doesn't mean to fall into a pit of despair and live there. Okay, but think about this when people who are really experiencing only the negative emotions, and we have terms for that, that it's depression, and we want them to get help because we understand that it's not good to live in bad emotion. But we somehow think that it makes more sense to only live in good instead of recognizing both. And it's not an either or, it's an and. So I know that this is contrary to a lot of the things that you've heard and maybe even to what you believe. And I'm just asking you to think about this. And again, to start noticing these things about yourself. Are you resisting the negative emotions? Because instead of resisting the negative emotions, which you're actually creating and distracting and bringing in this other tension to your life, if you just allow those emotions, instead of having to deal with them secondarily and as effects of other things, it is helpful. You learn to move through them faster. You have compassion for yourself. You're less critical. You're less judgmental of yourself and of others. So here are some practical things that you can do to start allowing some of those feelings without fearing that you're going to drop into this pit of bad feelings. So we already talked about notice when you have these feelings. The second part of that is to give it a name. And you can do this with good and bad feelings. Most people don't have a problem identifying the good and allowing it. Okay. So in this case, I'm talking about naming and allowing all of them. You might need some more practice on the quote unquote negative ones. So give it a name. On the website, there is also an article called Name It to Tame It. And I talk a little bit more about the psychology of giving a name to the feeling, and it helps reduce the intensity. So there's actually science behind that, and you can find that on coachwithkristen.com. So notice your feelings, give it a name, and then being able to describe it in your body. Is it in your throat? Is it in your jaw? Is it in your chest? Is it in your abdomen? Generally, it's like a sense of vibration. Mine, as I've been more in tune with my body, generally have a color. You may or may not. Some people, it's more of a temperature or a hardness or a tightness versus something that is easier or smoother. So notice, like with this body scan, what's going on. And then you put it all together and you are saying things to yourself like, I'm feeling sad. This is what sad feels like, and describe it. Sad is a lump in my throat. It feels hard. It's about the size of a golf ball. This is sadness. This is what happens when I feel sad. And you just notice it. You don't have to distract. You don't have to resist. You don't have to avoid. Notice that when I was talking about this, I was saying, this is what sadness feels like. I'm feeling sad. I did not say I am sad. That degree of separation that you are not your feelings, that you are still you and you are having feelings is also a strategy to help you move through that feeling and not get stuck there. So you're allowing them again instead of resisting or avoiding them. And it just normalizes this whole human experience by embracing the concept of good and bad, allowing all of the feelings, knowing that this is part of the human experience. When you embrace that and it normalizes all of those emotions, that's what's freeing and empowering. That you can let go and you can appreciate that about yourself. You can appreciate that about other people. You can be more authentic. You're a better listener. You're a better friend. You're a better parent. You're a better partner. There's nothing wrong with you. And you understand there's nothing wrong with other people when they're having these feelings too. Now, certainly there are ways that people are reacting and taking action on those feelings that may or may not be appropriate. And again, that's a whole other conversation. I'm talking about just allowing this idea that I can have this full spectrum of emotions, that I can feel irate and jealous or shut down, as well as surprised and trusting and brave, that I can be understanding, but also humble and so many more. I have a list that I'm looking at of like 400 feelings right now. Allow them. You don't have to resist. You don't have to avoid. There's nothing wrong with you when you are experiencing these things. It's the good and the bad. Trying to avoid half of your life, of your experience, avoiding what other people are going through by trying to convince them that there's something wrong, or thinking, even if you're not trying to convince them, just thinking that there's something wrong or something bad and you shouldn't feel that way. You shouldn't express that. You shouldn't have to have those. Just creates layers and layers of tension, inauthenticity, and problems that we don't even need to have. So I encourage you as you are going through this week, think about good and bad. Are you allowing them? Are there certain places in your life that you're better at this and others that might need some work? And if you have specific questions, I would love to address them for you. You can send me a message on Facebook or Instagram or on my website, and I'd love to hear from you. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you next time.